This is Shaky Town. I'm Brodie Hubbard, and my partner in podcasting is Gene George. We took a look at about 100 different late night talk show hosts over the course of American television history. We picked the top 32 to place in a single elimination tournament and determine a champion. We looked at like 92 names, I think.
Well, at least 92.
Yeah, yeah. Um, on the list of, we had to narrow it down to 32 to make this a manageable tournament, to manage the brackets. And there were some obvious names to cut out because their shows didn't last very long. If you look at like the 2000s into the 2010s, for a while they were giving like, and maybe the 90s too, they were giving like any celebrity a talk show.
I feel like when Carson retired,
Yeah.
then basically like you best come after the king, you best not miss kind of thing. I think when Carson retired, everybody was sort of like, yep, everyone who's ever been famous for 5 minutes should get a show.
Yeah.
They were just throwing stuff at the wall to see if it would stick.
Whoopi Goldberg had a show. Alec Baldwin had a show. Lauren
I, I
Bacon had a
do
show.
not remember that. There are a significant number of these folks on here that I'm like, they fucking had a show.
Magic Johnson had a show for two
I
months.
do remember that. I do remember Magic Johnson.
I think quite famously, Chevy Chase had a show that, and even though he's a comic genius, definitely was in our Saturday Night Live draft. And, you know, I just watched like a clip from Fletch like the other day, and it was just hilarious.
Yeah,
But
Fletch is a great movie.
he notoriously had like a bad talk show. So
Yes.
there were names like that we just didn't bother with. I also had this category of like, well, it was a late night show, but like, we're not looking just at like longevity and cultural notability. We're looking at like format. And so you have like a Sarah Silverman, a Chris Rock, and their shows were more like, you know, Sarah Silverman was doing like this kind of like documentary almost thing, right? And then Chris Rock was doing like a sketch comedy show basically. Um, and it's not to say he never like talked to people. Like there's some people who you know, would have like an interview segment, but we had to be kind of to get it down to 32.
Yeah.
We looked at Norm Macdonald, who had like a 10 episode like proper talk show, and then everything else has been like him one on one with comedians,
Yeah.
and it's been great, but not really the like standard kind of like late night talk show that we would think
What
of.
you would think of where someone's coming on to plug a book, someone else is coming on to show Johnny Carson an animal that's going to grab his face and bite his face off.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a variety of folks coming on to talk about projects or things.
Yeah. Colin Quinn and David Spade had more like just comedians, and
You know who we missed? Byron Allen.
I had Byron Allen on a list of what was our
But
reason?
his was terrible because his was literally like bring comedians on the show and tee up a joke.
Yeah.
I heard you don't like airplane food, Brodie. Let's talk about that. I mean, literally, it was the Byron Allen show was literally like, you know, I don't know, have trying to think of a comic from like the 80s to the mid, 90s. I don't know.
A Wayne's brother.
No, not a Wayans, but I'm talking about like stand-up comics,
Some
like
of
like
whom also
actual
had like short-lived talk shows.
like the Jeff Altman or somebody.
Oh, okay,
Have
okay.
like a Jeff Altman on. I heard you like butt steaks. How do you like those butt steaks, Jeff? Oh, I like them thick, rare, sweet, and meaty, Byron. Like just it was literally like the format was like three or four comics, and he just tees up their jokes for them.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
So I'm saying he would have been a clear winner.
I had put Regis Philbin, but he was
Yes.
for a daytime host and like I mean, he had this early career as like a nighttime sidekick, and it's hard to kind of really extract information about his like I don't, did he have like an actual late night show of his
I
own?
don't remember him having a late night show. I just remember him. He was the morning show. He was one of the pair of morning show hosts in LA forever. Like
Yeah.
that from the time I was a wee baby until my teenage years. I just remember Regis was on in the morning. So yeah, no, it's not. Yeah,
Um,
that's
Eric Andre, we decided wasn't a real talk show enough, more like a parody of a talk show, even though he had real guests.
yes.
Plus, it wasn't, it's not on regularly. He like does these like short seasons. So,
Yeah.
who else did I want to just kind of mention? Talked about Andy Cohen just because he has so many episodes, but it's really an after show. It's kind of like a Chris Hardwick Talking Dead kind of thing, but for Bravo.
Yeah, it's kind of the house propaganda organ because he runs all those shows. So
Yeah. Um, Ernie Kovacs had a talk show,
I did not know that. That was like a what?
but none of them have survived. Like you can't find the film.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Much like Ernie Kovacs himself.
yeah. Um, I thought we would talk about Spike Feresten because Spike Feresten was one of these kind of like, you know, had a talk show, but it turned out it was only 72 episodes and they like, leaked down over 3 years.
Yeah, that's weird. I thought that went on much longer. I mean, I guess it did go on much longer than I thought it did, just not to the tune of like as many episodes. Like 3 years should be like 600 episodes.
Yeah, yeah. When we had to like really start narrowing down, it was like, well, these two people have 250 plus episodes and this person had less than 100, so
Yes.
um and we'll talk about some of those. Any more names we should mention? I said that we should Graham Norton and Jonathan Ross are in their own United Kingdom
Yes.
division. I wanted to shout out Ralph Emery because I grew up in a household with Nashville Now and Ralph Emery
Yeah.
for prime time. So um, there were a couple of folks who had really short-lived shows on major networks or streaming shows. Like I never saw the Amber Ruffin show.
Okay, so Amber Ruffin, I've been meaning to talk to you, but I got busy. Amber Ruffin was not a talk show.
Okay, okay,
It was commentary and sketches and the like. She did not really have guests. Come on. Or
gotcha.
if she had guests, they were, like a writer that was working on her show, and they would talk about a specific thing. It was really skits more than
Gotcha.
little make 'em ups.
Um,
Great show, and I love her to death. She is like one of my favorite comedians and writers, just in general. Like
hmm,
I've loved her since I saw her on Drunk History. But yeah, her energy is thumbs up.
very cool. Did you get to see any of the Lily Singh clips I sent?
No, I was busy this morning. But I trust your judgment that she is bad. I have heard about her, and I have not heard positive things.
Yeah, go for those listening or watching, check out Drew Gooden's. Drew Gooden is a very funny Vine and YouTube guy. He's the road work ahead. I sure hope it does. Kid who since Vine ended has had like a pretty good media commentary YouTube show, and he talked about Lily Singh, who had that late night NBC slot. And we're gonna look at a couple of those hosts. She was like, I think one of the last folks with that slot, and didn't
Like
do
the Tom Snyder slot.
no, well, I guess he was NBC, huh? I always think associate him with CBS because that's the show I grew up with. No, like I was thinking more like the Carson Daly spot.
I think that's the old Tom Snyder slot.
But yeah, yeah, for sure. Zach Galifianakis, I'd really wanted on this list as a sentimental favorite, but it was only 36 episodes and it didn't do very well at the time.
Yeah,
Alan Thicke also had famously had a
Thicky
bit,
of the night.
but also wasn't really on that long.
Yeah,
Pat Sajak, I was surprised, did 198 episodes over 15 months.
yeah.
Don't know
Well,
if it,
like I said, normally, like with the Spike Fairstein stuff, like if he was on 3 years, it should be like 600 episodes.
yeah, yeah. Um, have you ever seen Jesus and Marrow?
I no. I mean, I've seen clips. I haven't seen, but I am aware of them.
Yeah, it's a Showtime show. They're a duo, so I just disqualified them because it wouldn't be fair. It'd be like having
Yeah.
Demolition fight
Yes.
uh, Honky Tonk Man. I don't know. Oh, I should say, like this tournament was definitely based on the last couple weeks watching or last couple days watching the unrivaled one-on-one tournament where
Mm.
the women in that league are doing like it's first to 11 points or when 10 minutes is off the clock, and it's a single elimination tournament. But also definitely like that WrestleMania 4 World Championship tournament after the belt had been vacated, and Macho Man ended up beating Ted DiBiase in the finals.
I'm really just here to badmouth a couple of people in this
Oh,
list.
I'm excited for that. Um, Taylor Tomlinson after midnight. I understand it's a pretty
Oh yeah, at midnight. No, 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 it's
show, but not really a talk show as much as
yeah,
a game
no.
show.
Yeah, that's I think that's they revived the whole at midnight, after midnight, whatever they're calling it these days.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
like her. I think she's good. I don't think it's a talk show.
yeah. Any other names here that you wanted to mention?
You know what I was thinking, and this is a day late and a dollar short, but I was thinking, what would have probably served us really well to divvy this up into like the golden age, silver age, bronze age,
Yeah.
because it there's a lot of names on this list, and I jokingly put in our spreadsheet David Letterman's just going to win this because I spoiler alert, I honestly think that's true, but I'm interested to take the journey there.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think that there are like Johnny Carson looms large over all of this.
Yeah.
But again, like I said earlier, I really think that while he locked the formula down and has the longevity, you know, he's the Caesar that created the empire of talk shows.
Right.
Even though there's your Steve Allens and your Jack Parrs, I feel like there's pre Johnny Carson, post Johnny Carson.
Right.
And really like there's just if this was all time, it's probably Johnny Carson. But I do think that maybe if we'd have divvied them up, but I think we got plenty to talk about,
Yeah.
given the stuff that we've narrowed it down to. But yeah,
Absolutely.
jokey shows, no. Who's the daddy shows, no.
Howard Stern, we decided was that was more just showing video of his radio show.
Yeah,
If he
yeah,
had tried his hand, I think I'm surprised that never did work out, like where there was an actual Howard Stern late night talk show. I think he just was making so much money in daytime radio.
yeah. I just think also his fans can't listen to things and watch things at the same time.
You're Jen
Is
Kirkman.
this where I go Baba Booey?
Don't let Jen Kirkman hear you say that.
No,
She's a
I'm just kidding. I'm not really kidding, but all right.
um
I don't want to piss Jen off.
Jen's not listening.
She's not listening.
She's busy she's launching a new show, The Mighty
Yeah,
Queen.
yeah, yeah.
Um
She's got a lot going on.
IMDb. I still need to see her Hallmark Christmas movie that
Mm.
she wrote a couple of years ago. Um there was a couple more people I just want to mention that I thought were interesting that we didn't include. Ross Schaefer from Almost Live, which we talked about during our draft.
Yep, yep.
He had, I guess, some talk show elements to that, but it was mainly a sketch show. Larry King and Bob Costas just decided that that was more like news, prime time, you know, rarely an audience, like rarely a live audience. I think a live audience was kind of important to some of these. Uh,
Yeah, and also he tended to do some more deep dives, like having like one or two people on for extended segments.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's I think that's what kills me for Larry King.
Michael Essany had a 7 year public access show, but his I don't know if you remember the E network. Is the E network still a thing?
Yes. Eh,
E.
eh,
Um,
exclamation mark.
um, that was only on for a short run there. We will have a very prominent E talk show host, obviously.
That's true.
Well, I say obviously, but she almost got left off the list because she wasn't coming up on
Yeah.
some resources we were using to cull together these names. I scoured Wikipedia for every article that mentioned late night to make sure like, I wasn't missing anybody in the history. I'll tell you about some of the rules that were established to for this. So regular hosts, not guest hosts or sidekicks who had their own shows. Also had the kind of Gary Shandling did not end up on this list, even though he was a Tonight Show host. Really, his prominent run as a late night talk show host was fictional. So
Yeah, exactly. Larry Sanders. Larry Sanders would make the list
Larry Sanders
if
would
it was
win.
real. If it was real.
Not variety game or sketch shows, not fake news shows, although like some of your prominent fake news show hosts did end up on this because they had legit talk shows.
Yeah.
Um, Interviews, panels, or comedy kind of had to be the focus, not just like straight news or like not a John Oliver, who's just talking to the audience and the camera, not really people. Um,
That's more of an essay show, I would say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The Fernwood Tonight rule, where it had to be real hosts, guests, and conversations have to outnumber scripted or parody. So, Letterman would have like a Chris Elliott character on,
Yeah.
but Eric Andre, like that whole thing's a shtick, and most of the
Yeah.
show is like a shtick. And cited Joe Rogan kind of podcasting doesn't count. Although
I believe my quote was "fuck Joe Rogan in the neck."
Joe Rogan is going to come up though in this discussion for reasons we'll talk about in a little bit. For a controversial, I think somebody who's going to be a controversial pick.
What? Oh, I was going to say Joe Rogan and controversy.
And we decided to do so. How I did this was I listed them 1 through 32 once we got down to the final 32. I think I've named or the interesting notes of some of these. Oh, didn't have Samantha Bee, didn't have Space Ghost or Alf. Um,
Tragedy.
not like a Springer or Donahue, not an Ed,
The fix is in.
not an Ollie G. Looked at Jim Rash for a second, but that was more behind the scenes of writers' room and TV shows. Although that was, I think, late night. I thought Roseanne was going to up on this list, then realized her talk show was actually mostly in syndicated daytime. Crook and Chase, also, I'm guessing you never heard of Crook and Chase, but would
No,
have, but that was syndicated daytime.
that sounds like an ambulance chasing lawyer firm.
Comedy Bang Bang and other kind of like, even though those are mostly real people, most of that was scripted dialogue.
Well,
Lo-
I think there were a lot. Most of them were real people. I mean, aside from Space Ghost, Max Headroom, and Alf, I think everyone on here is a real person. Like that, there are a lot of characters. They were
yeah,
doing characters
yeah. Love Line also didn't count because that was a
because Adam Carolla is not real, and neither is Dr. Drew.
and they didn't have talk shows that at least Adam Carolla's talk show, if it was a real talk show there for a while, didn't have much of a stint. So here's what we did. So here's like the top 32. Um, Most of these will be self-evident, but I'll give a little background on a couple of them. We'll get more into the background once we do the matchups. But I numbered them. I randomly assigned digits 1 through 32, and then assign them. So like number one was Faye Emerson. And it was really funny that Faye Emerson ended up number one because she's actually considered like the godmother, grandmother of all talk shows because like she was the first one kind of in the format. She was um do you know Faye Emerson?
I know the name. I don't know the story behind it. So please.
So Faye Emerson was like film, stage, TV, um actress in like the 40s, and someone thought, let's give her a show where she'll interview people. And that's what she did. And that created kind of like the interview talk show format. And she did plenty of episodes. It's just that, you kind of have to dig up YouTube clips, but like, um, she's the god. She could not be on this list. She's the godmother of.
Sure, sure.
And so it's funny that she was randomly assigned number one. Um, Craig Kilborn number two. He had
Because he's shit.
Jack Parr number three. Greg Gutfeld, which is going to be an interesting discussion. He's a Fox News guy who has had talk shows. Was number four. Um, so that's just to say that these I'll read all the names, but they all randomly got assigned a number. And then I took the numbers 1 through 32 and they got randomly paired. And it ended up in some really funny pairings, um,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll talk about each of those random matchups, randomly assigned matchups. Um, I think the funniest is going to be our first bout, which I'll just say now is David Letterman versus Faye Emerson. Um, and it's almost like, is there really any more worthy contender for the godmother of talk shows than
The David Letterman.
the once and future king of talk shows? So, um, you know, he was number 13 and 13 and 1 got paired. And so then it's like, okay, who's 13 and 1? Letterman, Emerson. I put those names together. The next two that get pulled are 20 and 16, Joey Bishop and Chelsea Handler. So whoever wins versus Bishop and Handler will face the winner of Letterman and Emerson. So that's how the matchups worked. And again, we'll give a short biography and our thoughts on each host as we kind of go down the list. Um, the names on the list, the final 32 that we agreed on: Faye Emerson, Craig Kilborn, Jack Parr, Greg Gutfeld, Stephen Colbert, Joe Franklin, Conan O'Brien, Tom Green. I feel like that's going to need a little more qualification, and so we'll get to Tom Green when I get to his bracket. Larry Wilmore, Steve Allen, Joan Rivers, who had her own talk show, even though she was mainly a guest host. She actually did have a long enough running talk show. I kind of felt like we had to have her on here. Arsenio Hall, David Letterman, Dick Cavett, Dennis Miller, who had his HBO long running show besides kind of like the Fox one that was didn't do as well, but I thought was a good show. We'll talk about that. Chelsea Handler, who almost got overlooked on this list because she kind of came up in categories of like, like panel discussion stuff, but she's had her own like talk show and she had a lot of interview segments on
Yeah.
Chelsea lately. So ultimately thought she was more worthy than like a Lily Singh. Merv Griffin, Greg Kinnear, Tom, who that wasn't just Talk Soup. Like he was on the NBC later spot. So Tom Snyder, Joey Bishop, Jimmy Kimmel, James Corden. Um, our friend Ryan McKee won an Emmy for his work on James Corden. Johnny Carson, Bill Maher, Craig Ferguson, George Lopez, Monique, who I don't know if everybody who doesn't have Black Entertainment Television is aware how to 250 episodes of the Monique Show on BET. Carson Daly, who actually had a longer running show on this list than a lot of people. Seth Meyers, Jay Leno, Jon Stewart, and Jimmy Fallon. So some obvious names, some less than obvious names there. Um, any more thoughts before we look at the brackets?
No, I think we jump into it.
Okay. Let's look at our round one matchups. David Letterman versus Faye Emerson. So my argument for Faye Emerson is she is the founding mother of all this, but as you said, Gene, you're kind of predicting Letterman wins the whole thing. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Uh, yeah. So there's that principle where the person that invents something oftentimes isn't the person that actually perfects it or makes the money off of it. And I feel like this is entirely a cut and dried version of that. She may have pioneered it, she may have been the first on the beach, but especially for talk shows for the last 30 years, Letterman's influence is probably second only to Johnny Carson's. I mean, it really is that. I can remember, I watched Carson when I was a kid because that's what was on, and if your parents were watching it or you were up late or whatever, or you were watching reruns.
They're the best of compilations too.
Yeah, best ofs and yeah, I mean,
I
and
watch
and
those.
and and it's so I grew up I knew what the format was, and oh, and when you're homesick, I watched like Merv Griffin had a daytime show, Mike Douglas had, so I was familiar with the format, but I can still remember laying on the couch watching TV in Vegas when I was a kid, and Letterman came on, and it was probably it had to have been like his first or second season, and it was insane. It was like he did all of the things that a talk show did, but made things,
Monologue, guests.
but and skits. Carson did skits, um, but it was so fresh and new. So I would say that, yeah, it's great that she was there first, but again, for since whatever 1982 or 3 or whatever Letterman started his show, that his influence is outsized on talk shows from that point on.
Yeah.
It's kind of why I was thinking we needed to break this up into eras, because you know, you could easily have three winners based around, who's the heavyweight in each era. But yeah, that's my argument for Letterman.
Yeah. Um, I think we'll call Letterman the winner on that one. Um, and I think it's easier to find his work now than probably it is to dig up Faye Emerson's work. So,
Yeah,
uh, next round one matchup. This one might be kind of a similar answer, but let's talk about Joey Bishop versus Chelsea Handler. Now, Joey Bishop, of course, was a member of the Rat Pack. He hosted a late night talk show. His sidekick was Regis Philbin. Um, he was active like in starting in like the late 40s, 50s, etc. Um, the Joey Bishop show was on like from 61 to 60. Well, no, that was the sitcom Joey Bishop show, right? The Joey Bishop. So it's hard sometimes with these guys. Like, well, like
yeah, yeah,
it's going to be a later answer because it was like the sitcom Monique and then the talk show Monique. Joey Bishop was the late night 90-minute talk show on ABC from 67 to 69 that had like Regis Philbin. He was also a substitute host on the Tonight Show.
yeah.
But
That's where I remember him from.
um, that's like this grand thing in the history of television. And then you have Chelsea Handler, who like I worked across the street from in Santa Monica and employed friends of ours. Why don't you talk to us about Chelsea Handler?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, folks we've had on the show, worked for, were on panels, did writing for, um, Jen Kirkman, uh, April Richardson. I mean, so I mean, barring, not that we have to recuse ourselves. Um, Again, I think it's another one of those things where I feel like Joey Bishop's credits are much greater than his talk show credentials.
Yeah,
Um, that's not to say that he didn't, he probably could get great guests because he was connected to some of the biggest names in show business for 50 years.
yeah,
But, but yeah, he just, I kind of feel that in this head-to-head matchup, it's modern format versus old school format.
yeah,
I'd lay down on the side of Chelsea Handler
yeah,
more than I would for Joey Bishop.
yeah. I would say that we see a lot more influence from Chelsea Handler's work nowadays. I think some of the Bravo stuff
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
is as her influence, and I think not that she was the first or last to do like a panel of comedians, but certainly the format was you know she I think she helped crystallize that format,
Yeah.
and really like help establish the E network as far as that goes. So
Hmm.
we'll move Handler on to the next round. All right, next bracket. Carson Daly versus Bill Maher. This is going to be interesting one, I think. So Bill Maher was the host of Politically Incorrect. He's the host now of Real Time. Yeah, I guess he has this thing Club Random. I haven't really watched much of it. I just see people making fun of it. Like Bill Maher's kind of like gone from like a cool, edgy guy to like kind of leaning.
A shitty curmudgeon.
Yes. That doesn't mean, however, like his influence in late night isn't important. Then you have Carson Daly, who longevity wise, like I mean, he held that gosh, I mean, I'm not talking about TRL, which
No,
was its own thing on MTV, but like as far as Carson Daly and late night television, how many episodes did he end up having? He had last call with Carson Daly was gosh.
it was a long time.
Yeah. He I mean till 2019. When did he jump on though? Because
I,
that was
I,
during
I
the
feel like he did like 10 years. I feel like he did like 10 years that show.
yeah. He well he did it also like from 2000 like till 2013, but then did he come back on? I don't know. It's kind of hard sometimes with these because
Yeah.
it,
I feel like he was there for a very long time.
yeah. I I think the fact that like I can't think of a Carson Daly interview that stands out and that we're not even sure what years he was on.
Yeah.
I think that's your answer.
I want to cockblock Mars as hard as I possibly can because I dislike the man and I
Yeah.
think he's so far as up his own ass that it's ruined any cred he might have had. But I think, you know, I think there's only so much you can reward the workman like slugging it out in the trenches. I think yeah, Bill Maher is going to be remembered for his bullshit that he does more than, you know, Carson Daly is. As much as I would really love to be able to put my thumb on the scale and tip it in favor of Daly, I think we got to go with Maher on this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still confused trying to decipher when did Carson Daly actually host Last Call, but
Yeah,
um
again, I feel like it was a very long time. I mean, for a talk show especially.
yeah.
Like when he stopped doing it, I was like, damn, he's been doing that forever.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next bracket. Bill
Moving
Maher
on.
won that one. James Corden versus Merv Griffin. James Corden, I'd say modern day, um, already off the air. Late Show with James Corden was 2015 to 2023, so he definitely like logged the time. He had that you called it the Tom Snyder, or I maybe called it the Tom Snyder slot. He inherited the spot from Craig Ferguson. Um, lots of segments that were like famous car karaoke, things like that.
Right.
Employed our friend Ryan. Um, Merv Griffin, on the other hand, another one of those guys like old timey
Yeah.
showbiz legends, and among the other things that he did, he had the Merv Griffin show. But I mean, that was a long time. Merv Griffin show was on from in different incarnations and syndication, etc., like 62 to 63, 69 to 72, 72 to 86, different time
Yeah, I
slots.
remember watching him as a kid. I remember watching him all the time. But that's the thing is, so Merv Griffin, I think is an interesting dark horse in this because it's easy to say Gordon carpool karaoke, but Merv Griffin, the reason why he had talk shows is because uh, he was such a big producer and the syndication packages and stuff. You know, he was producing all of these different game shows and various other shows, and and if he wanted a talk show, he could just have a damn talk show.
Right.
You know, which I find interesting. Again, also because he was such a big producer and Hollywood guy, he had access to everybody. You know, and there wasn't anybody that wouldn't come on to yap with him because he was um, kind of the hub of a empire. You know,
Yeah.
a television empire. Um, Gordon's got carpool karaoke. He's a dick to wait staff. Like those, those, those make kind of cancel out for me. But I'm willing to be swayed on Gordon's behalf. I think Merv Griffin is another one of those that's like he was really big when he was really big, and that can either be we've discounted people for that, but I feel like it's unlike Joey Bishop, like Merv Griffin's hand was in so many other pies, and I don't
Yeah.
know whether that should be rewarded in this format, but I find him a much more interesting character than James Corden.
I
Just
think, yeah, no, I'm gonna say we move Griffin ahead. Like, w maybe we look back 10 years from now and James Corden's influence on late night will be undeniable. But at this point, I mean, his 8 years compared to Griffin's 104
407,000.
and cultural influence, no, Griffin, I think, clear winner.
Yeah. I mean, and James Corden should get credit for because I I feel like Carpool Karaoke is one of those things that is a um revitalized late night in a lot of ways because people were paying attention to that on YouTube and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And again, these brackets were totally random.
mhm.
If there's other folks Corden would have beat
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but not this time.
This was a tough road to hoe.
Yeah. Next one's going to be tough too. It's
Mhm.
Jack Parr versus Dick Cavett. Jack Parr was the second host of The Tonight Show from 1957 to 1962. Um, in fact, the Time magazine obituary said talk show history is two eras: before Parr and below Parr.
Wah wah.
Dick Cavett, meanwhile, like how many legendary moments did Dick Cavett have on his show when he had
Yeah,
like John Lennon and Yoko Ono on there? A guy who like got put in movies as Dick Cavett talk show host, most notably Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Um, Folks younger than us might not know either of these people though.
yeah,
Um,
definitely not Jack Parr. I mean, again, this kind of is the it's a little bit different nuance, but I think this is a Letterman versus Emerson thing.
yeah.
Um, they're definitely much more closer to contemporaries by
Oh yeah.
a few decades,
Jack, Jack,
but
Jack Parr, when he was announcing his return to television in 1973, did that on Dick Cavett's show.
yeah. So I mean, I feel like Havitt's the shoe in on this,
Yeah.
but again, it's like you cannot you but if Steve Allen and Jack Parr made the Tonight Show, Johnny Carson. Okay, here's the one thing I think I'm going to basically be saying the same things over and over again. But let me say this about Jack Parr: the fact that he walked away from his show because he didn't want to do it anymore is the best thing. Like I that's so admirable in a world where people, ride shit into the ground,
Yeah.
especially a job like like talk show host where you just basically have to show up, be prepared, shoot the shit with people. I do think that to me that mm, what's the word I'm looking for? That self-awareness is attractive to me there. I just think Dick Cavett's, again, walking on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
I just think Cavett and did more than Jack Parr.
I will push Dick Cavett forward in our brackets.
Yeah.
Um, this one is tough because of I
Yeah, it
think
is.
who loses. Um,
Yeah, this is
Conan O'Brien. I think we're going to talk about Conan O'Brien through a lot of these brackets.
yeah.
He was obviously inherited David Letterman, and then went on to, and we'll talk about everything he did. He's got a couple incarnations of what he does, but like Craig Ferguson is his opponent in this, and Craig Ferguson had a really brilliant run on the Late Late Show.
Yeah, this is Alien versus Predator territory. Whoever wins, we lose. It really is. This is a tough one. And I'm leaning O'Brien. I love Ferguson. And I love his again, kind of like Jack Parr. The the amount of Craig Ferguson's, especially seeing the stuff that he's done since,
Yeah,
the amount of Craig Ferguson's personality that comes out through his work is it's joyful to watch.
Yeah,
Just the monologues that he would do, um, you know, it was always fun to watch.
yeah,
Um, I think if there's such a thing as a formalist, absurdist talk show, Conan O'Brien's got it nailed. I mean, Conan O'Brien, SNL, The Simpsons, like all the incarnations of talk shows that he's had.
yeah.
I he was kind of he was passed the torch and was, stabbed in the back kind of thing. I think it's O'Brien by a hair, but I wish it was Ferguson. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. We are subject to the brackets
Yeah, the whim of the brackets. This is the will of Landrew.
and that's not gonna and so Brian moves forward. We love Craig Ferguson.
Yeah,
This sounds like I paired these two on purpose. I didn't. The Daily Show black correspondent Larry Wilmore versus the first black talk show host of prominence,
yeah,
Arsenio Hall.
yeah,
There's certainly been other folks who, black folks in entertainment and in talk shows, but like Arsenio Hall was like the guy. And, I kind of like, I don't know that we have to talk much further about this. I think Arsenio Hall is a clear winner. Larry Wilmore
100%.
had a talk show,
Yeah,
like 250 episodes,
it was good.
um, became famous for his Daily Show work, but like Arsenio Hall.
But let's also just really quick,
Yeah.
just to nail it down.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a black dude on TV having a talk show.
No, no,
It
no.
was like it was everybody watched it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this was on BET at 1:30 in the morning or something. Like Arsenio Hall. I mean, Bill Clinton playing the saxophone. Like, that there's go on, move forward. Like,
Yeah.
it was being parodied on Carcinio,
Yeah. Yeah.
from a Dana Carvey character on SNL.
Yeah.
Yeah, moving on.
I just wanted to be clear. Like, I did not pair those on purpose. That was
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
brackets. Like, Larry Wilmore is like the Daily Show black correspondent, and
yeah.
so, and had a
You,
respectable.
you would you say that this was a separate but equal bracket?
Oh, God.
Sorry, sorry. Moving on.
Moving on. Um, yeah, I don't know how the call on this one. Joan Rivers versus Steve Allen. So, like, this is all Tonight Show centric because
Yeah,
Rivers was like the guest host, the permanent guest host for a while there. Um, I mean, well, Gary Shandling was definitely designated a permanent guest host at one point. I think Joan
yeah,
Rivers was, but
yeah.
Steve Allen was like the host of the Tonight Show. Now, Joan Rivers struck out on her own, and it didn't work out, to say the least. Like, she ended up having a great career after that, on the E Network, coming up again, the E Network. Um, but her actual talk show, like, I don't know that there was any memorable moments. I think it was more famous for just being in the shadow of Johnny Carson and ruining that relationship.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's the thing is I think we have to give it to Steve Allen, and more is the pity that most of the story on the Joan Rivers side is that like they didn't talk for like 20 years after,
Yeah, yeah,
like she's, basically moved out from his sphere of influence.
yeah,
Like, but that's neither here nor there to the, matter that is germane.
yeah.
Uh,
And there were plenty of women hosting talk shows in daytime, and would go on to
yeah.
Rosie O'Donnell, Ellen
Mhm,
DeGeneres.
mhm,
Joan
mhm.
Rivers like the first like major, is
Late
that
night.
AM? Dinah Shore, did I mention? Dinah Shore, it was
Mhm.
daytime, I think.
Yep, she was.
All right, so we'll give Alan the nod on this one. I don't know if you're going to agree with me on this next one, and we're going to talk Jimmy Kimmel versus Tom Green. Um, so off the top of your head, you might say, well, Jimmy Kimmel hosts like an original talk show. Like, there was not a talk show on ABC until Jimmy Kimmel. Like, he took you know, like Nightline was on ABC forever, but like Jimmy Kimmel was one of the first, like, hey, Leno's hosting
New.
Tonight Show, Letterman's going to be on CBS, ABC needs a talk show, and like Kimmel's had it. He's had great guests, great interviewer. He's had memorable like ensemble characters. He's had memorable segments. An affable guy. Um I haven't heard anybody say anything bad about Jimmy Kimmel. Um
No, I got nothing bad. I mean, I've liked his work since he was on K Rock,
yeah, yeah.
LA's KROQ 106.7 FM,
Um
Pasadena, Los Angeles.
uh but Tom Green revolutionized, and I there's some bias here because I just watched the documentary,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
Tom Green documentary. Revolutionized MTV, revolutionized podcasting. Joe Rogan has said that his show is a direct result
yeah.
of
I just saw that quote. It's his fault. It's Tom Green's fault. That's the biggest strike against him right there.
and it's like so like they both have and they both kind of came, like Kimmel came from Man Show and Comedy Central. Green came from MTV. Like they're equal in the
They
sense
both
of
came from basic cable.
and young culture,
Yeah,
and then but like Tom Green was a trailblazer. Kimmel does like the late night thing
yeah,
and has held it down for years. So
yeah.
like I'm biased towards Green, and so I'm just wondering though, like for the purposes of the late night talk show host tournament, is do we move Kimmel ahead because he's doing the thing? He's doing the blueprint that was set by Carson and Letterman and Leno before him, or do we reward it to Tom Green for revolutionizing the format?
Yeah, this is a tough one because I'm much more sympathetic to Green than you think I might be. But uh again, kind of like the Carson Daly thing, Kimmel's doing good work, right?
Yeah.
And it's consistent work, and he's part of the national zeitgeist. Like things that he says about, our orange felon in the White House, they oftentimes go viral. The skits that he does, the man on the street interviews and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, it really is a matter of I think it's Kimmel by a hair. I think you have to acknowledge the fact that the other thing about Tom Green is the absurdist anti-comedy thing. He was one of the first modern purveyors of that. You wouldn't have a Tim and Eric without a Tom Green.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And unfortunately, wouldn't have a monetized Joe. You wouldn't have Joe Rogan saying that I have fuck you money if it wasn't for him going on Tom Green saying we got to figure out a way to make money off of this. Um, but some of that stuff, again, Faye Emerson, some of that stuff is groundbreaking, but a lot of it is also tangential to the talk show world, I think. So I think it's Kimmel by a hair. I think Green needs to be acknowledged as the person that put a lot of that stuff that we see in comedy, in uh, streaming based talk shows, um, influencing the podcasting universe. All of that stuff is absolutely true, but I think it's just, you know, it's
Yeah.
not nearly as clear of like, yeah, Letterman's the man. Like I have no problem, saying Kimmel hasn't done anything that I can think of except maybe fucking Matt Damon that is like revolutionary. And I don't even think it's revolutionary. I just think it's
Right.
fucking fun.
Right.
So that's where I'm at with it. Your call, buddy. Your call. Because I think it's a pube away.
Yeah. I say I say the nod go. I think we have to go for influence and revolutionizing. I think we have to go for
Do it.
Green.
Do it, man. No, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. I just fell, my coin fell slightly on the other side.
Yeah. It's tough. But we'll see how the brackets.
I think he's going to get obliterated but well, he may not get obliterated, but I feel like, if he comes up against a Cavett or,
Yeah,
or whatever, it's a done deal. But
I feel
dark
you.
horse, man, that's fine.
Okay. Craig Kilborn versus Seth Meyers.
Seth Meyers.
Why don't you like Craig Kilborn? And we'll talk about Seth Meyers in the next round more. And I agree. Like besides the fact that Seth Meyers has done great work Saturday Night Live and now is holding down the NBC slot.
Kil-
Uh,
Kilborn was a dick to Liz Winstead.
exactly.
That's pretty much my. I mean, I think he was fine. I think he was
He's the first
fine.
host of the Daily Show,
That's what I'm
and
saying.
he had that Late Late Show from '99 to 2004. Um, so he put in the time.
No, no, he's got the chops. I feel well for me personally, and all joking aside, um, he's a personally my personal taste. He is a little too broy for my personal taste.
Bro E Sports.
Broy, yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know.
A little too, I was, playing rugby with my frat brothers the other day, and someone keyed my beamer, kind of broy.
Right.
That's really. I mean, I think again. First off, that.
Okay.
Second off, kind of the same thing about Carson Daly. Name a great Kilborn talk show moment. I can name about 700 Seth Meyers moments. I watch Seth Meyers, unlike a lot of I don't watch Kimmel. If Kimmel pops up with something, I'll watch it. But
Yeah.
but I seek Meyers out. A closer look has been invaluable in this time of chaos in politics. He's got good guests, consistent. And he's got the chops. He's got the SNL, weekend update chops. He's got the SNL writing chops. I think I think it's a Myers hands down, but again,
Yeah.
convince me.
I don't need to. We're gonna move on. This is gonna be a quick one.
Yeah,
Great lady. Monique has had a sitcom, had a BET show for 250 episodes. She is pitted against Jon Stewart. Now, here's the important thing to realize. Jon Stewart's not being considered here for his Daily Show work because we said no, not news shows. Jon Stewart, though, did have a couple incarnations of a talk show. I also think it would be remiss if we totally ignored his interviewing on Daily Show, but other things that he's done.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Who's been more influential in late night? Monique's 250 episode show on BET or Jon Stewart?
Jon Stewart.
Moving on.
Short attention. No, no, and I'm voting him only for short attention span theater
Yes. um,
with Patty Rosborough.
I see. I first saw Jon Stewart on You Wrote It, You Watch It with the State.
Mm.
Um, Stephen Colbert versus Dennis Miller. Now, we've talked about both these guys on Saturday Night Live draft and the sketch draft. Um, Dennis Miller has done a lot of work.
Yeah,
Late night, not just Saturday Night Live, I mean, obviously, like he had his talk show. Janine Garofalo I was introduced to her on the Dennis Miller show.
interesting.
Yeah, and his HBO show was so great. His HBO show was great. Um, Especially like Dennis Miller, Henry Rollins conversations on that show. And he had an audience, he had a monologue, like he did the thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know that more people watch Stephen Colbert. I know that Miller has tarnished his legacy with his Fox stuff. Colbert has the late night show that David Letterman had, and now Colbert has it. And plus, he revolutionized stuff on the Daily Show and on the
Yeah,
Stephen Colbert show before that.
the Colbert Report.
Yeah. So I think we move on Colbert.
I think so. I think so. I think this is another one of those where it's I could argue either one. I just think that Miller's a little more in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. This next one's gonna be weird. Joe
Straight
Franklin
Joe Franklin, the Joe Franklin show, sponsored by Straits Matzahs. If it ain't Straits, it ain't Matzah.
versus Greg Gutfield. My parents love Greg Gutfield.
Sure.
He's
I
had
think that's their tagline.
he's had a couple different shows on Fox. He's I don't think he's doing bad in ratings, and he has guests and he has conversations. Um, he can be funny sometimes. He's usually annoying and conservative. Um, a lot more people today know Greg Gutfield than they probably know Joe Franklin.
I 100% agree. Joe Franklin has a special place in my heart because of, I should have brought it. It's sitting on my side table right now.
Yeah.
Joe Franklin's Encyclopedia of Comedians. Joe Franklin is a legend.
Yeah.
Again, I think this we come back to the, do you honor someone who was a trooper and
Mhm.
interviewed an insane number and variety of people for years and years and years, um, or someone who's a popular, Fox commentator slash. The scales are fairly balanced in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I'm leaning Joe Franklin, mostly nostalgia for me, and I prefer, out of that matchup, I prefer Joe Franklin to move forward. However, as we've talked before, Franklin's stuff is owed. It's so owed.
Mhm.
It is very, very decrepit and owed. And you know,
Who has the most cultural cachet and influence on the format though? Because I feel like once Gutfeld's gone, that'll be the end of it. It's like Rush Limbaugh. Nobody talks about Rush Limbaugh anymore.
I would say again, this is the well, I talk about him all the time because I think one of the opening salvos in this bullshit, bombastic fucking demagoguery
Yeah.
that we now have a fucking entire administration filled with.
Yeah.
But um, definitely of the comedians of a generation one or two previous to me,
Mhm.
um, his influence is writ large. I mean, Billy Crystal did Joe Franklin parodies.
Yeah.
Like, they've been on Saturday Night Live. I'm sure Gutfield's been on, SNL, cold opens or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I, I, I feel like Franklin's a showbiz legend and Gutfield's a Fox commentator. That's my bottom line.
I
So
agree.
I'm willing to.
I'm pushing Franklin.
Yep, Franklin's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, we'll look back in 10 years and maybe everybody will talk about how Gutfield and Corden changed the landscape. But
Yeah, I don't think so, but sure.
um, this one I think is another tough matchup in a way. And we're getting down to the last three, and these are some heavyweights. And again, randomly assigned brackets and stuff, randomly assigned numbers and randomly assigned brackets. And when it all came down, you had George Lopez versus Tom Snyder. I think we need to talk about Lopez and his significance in the whole Leno debacle. So I'll let you cover that. Tom Snyder is another one of these guys like Dick Cavett who he just was always around and he was a such a force in late night that when Letterman was at the helm of late night CBS, he gave Tom Snyder a show, and it's that show that's been carried on over the years since then, from Ferguson to Kilborn to Ferguson to Corden and stuff. Tom Snyder just has these great interviews, moments, arguments he got in with Charles Manson and John Lydon, and then a reconciliation with John Lydon years later.
And Charles Manson.
um, George Lopez, though, is a funny dude and had an important, culturally important show. And I don't just mean, for Latinos, I mean in pop
Mhm.
culture, an
Yeah.
important show. And as I'll let you explain, his role in the whole Leno debacle.
Um, well, let's talk Snyder first because I think regardless of the regardless of the big late night shakeup
Yeah.
things, um, I feel like Tom Snyder is one of those characters that he made hay out of what normally would be just like a totally random garbage spot.
Yeah.
Like people talked about his stuff, again, parodies of his stuff.
Yeah. Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, it's he did he did a lot of really good work with not a lot. With basically like a almost, Charlie Rose black box theater kind of table dude smoking
Yeah,
and chairs,
yeah,
you know. So I think that's a lot of lifting is done there.
yeah.
Um, but I'm
Well, let's talk about where George Lopez came from. Besides being a stand-up and
yeah.
actor, he was given his own talk show in 2009. It was called Lopez Tonight. It was on TBS. It was on midnight Eastern time. They moved it back to accommodate a new Conan O'Brien show. And like there was all this weird stuff about like the time zone time or the starting time push back and forth.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he ended up only being on for 2 seasons, but he was kind of in the mess of all that. And I kind of feel like because of that, maybe he didn't get to prove out the premise, but and being a Latino host is important. Being having on a show on TBS, which it didn't have like late night until Conan and Lopez was important. But I think Snyder has more of the cultural, pop culture,
Yeah,
footprint.
yeah. Yeah, see, again, I think kind of like the Joan Rivers thing, I think anything having to do with that politics of late night
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily make it better for him to move forward. I think his work uh I think his work is solid,
Mhm.
but yeah.
So moving Snyder ahead, these next two matchups are kind of easy. uh, Johnny Carson versus Jimmy Fallon. I've had my opinion about Fallon has gone up and down over the years. I've liked him sometimes, then he's done some stuff that I thought was cringy. He definitely is holding down the Tonight Show for several years now. Um, we could argue the merits of Jimmy Fallon as far as a comedian, as a sketch comedian, as a late night host, as an interviewer, as a member of pop culture. Um, but his opponent's Johnny fucking Carson.
Yeah, this is no yeah, this is the 800-pound gorilla versus the dude who breaks up at every third sketch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to say this, and this is intentionally damning with faint praise. If anyone's picked up the torch of the least funny parts of the Johnny Carson Tonight Show, it is Jimmy Fallon. Is weak ass skits, lots of fucking game shows. It's kind of like I kind of feel like he's one of the ones that I came to talk shit about. Um, and it sucks that it's Carson because it just now it looks like I'm punching puppies. Um, but yeah, I do feel like out of all of the current talk show hosts out there, I don't know. At some point, I followed the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon on Instagram, and on a regular basis, something comes up that I go, "Fuck, I could unfollow this dude." Like it's literally like it's him. It's just there's something about him that rubs me the wrong way. Um, so yeah, Fallon Carson wins. Moving on.
All right. Um, and the next one, I want to talk about the winner of this one more in the next round. But let's
Okay.
just get this out of the way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Greg Kinnear, who had that late NBC slot for a while,
Hmm.
and charming enough actor. We loved him on Talk Soup. Had some good interviews. Had a fun thing where he'd have the guest from the last night's interview, leave a question for today's interview subject.
Yep.
His opponent's Jay Leno,
Yeah, no.
and we'll
Love him
talk.
or hate him, and I hate him. No, I don't hate him. Jimmy Fallon comes close to hating, but Leno's just like, dude, come on.
All right, so moving Jay Leno forward.
Yep, yep.
Um, a couple of these rounds we can burn through now because we've talked about them.
Mm-hmm.
David Letterman versus Chelsea Handler. We love you, Chelsea.
Yeah, no Letterman. 1,000% Letterman.
Um, this one might be a little harder. Bill Maher versus Merv Griffin. Who has more of an effect on late night?
Bill Maher does. Again, as much as just like Maher versus Daly, as much as I want to kick Maher in the balls, I think you can't. I think you can't have that. I think from a modern standpoint, Griffin got into this round from from past influence and Mars much more current events, even though his persona of late is a shit stirrer and generally doesn't add to the conversation, in my opinion.
Copy that. Um, Dick Cavett, Conan O'Brien. It's tough.
Okay, this one's a rough one.
I think I think Conan has more of the footprint late night. I think he earned that spot. I think Dick Cavett's a great interviewer
Yeah,
and celebrity and a figure and had important moments in pop culture. Um,
yeah. I think if we're talking strictly late night, I think as an interviewer and journalist type, Cavett gets the nod, but I think Conan O'Brien again with Letterman, O'Brien, like that's like 75% of the modern talk show
yeah,
formula right there.
yeah.
You know, yeah, I get it's O'Brien. It's O'Brien.
The next matchup, also a tough one if we're going to talk about ultimate cultural influence. Arsenio Hall versus Steve Allen.
Hall by a nose, I think the for kind of the same reasons as Merv Griffin.
Mhm.
I think the foundations that were laid down are important, but Arsenio Hall is a lot closer to his influence is a lot more felt in a greater power because of the proximity to today's date.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Tom Green versus Seth Meyers.
Seth Meyers. I mean, I already said why I think, but I again, I think we're coming now down to again the nostalgia and influence versus um current influence or the impetus that is given to modern talk show stuff
Yeah.
is kind of my vote there. I mean, I like Seth Meyers better as a talk show host
Mhm.
also, but
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. But I'm willing to be swayed if you have a more powerful argument for Tom Green on this at this bracket.
So I would vote for Tom Green over Seth Meyers for the same reason I voted him over Jimmy Kimmel, is that I think Seth Meyers has been handed a slot and has done very well in it and has followed the blueprint that was set before him. I don't think he has revolutionized things in the same way as a Letterman, a Conan. Um, I still think that Tom Green here is more of an innovator. Um, I feel like if Green's good enough to beat Kimmel in the bracket, then he's good enough to beat Myers in the bracket. I don't know who I would choose between Myers or Kimmel. I feel like they would be very much on par with each other, not Jack Parr.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
but
Yeah, I hear you.
Kimmel might have the edge over Myers for longevity. But I can't really. I know when it comes to like single elimination, you can't necessarily litigate it based on performance in past brackets. But
Yeah. No, I think this is a little different because part of the reason why Green moved forward was because of innovation. I think I think I watch Seth Meyers. I see he does a lot of stuff outside of the actual talk show.
mhm.
That's an adjunct. Like he does. There's a lot of internet stuff that I watch too. So I think I'm more biased in his favor. I feel like Kimmel versus Green was a lot more cut and dried. I think Seth Meyers is more. I'm not going to say avant-garde because that's not the right word. I think Seth Meyers has a lot of irons in the fire in terms of how he's doing his show. the stuff, if you include all of the, if you include the talk show itself, like if you were tuning in I don't watch his show on television.
Yeah.
I watch it on the internet. So oftentimes I will watch like a closer look in the monologue and then some of the guests.
Yeah.
But I definitely watch, he does a thing called corrections
Mhm.
where he goes over the jokes from the monologue in the past week that people have sent corrections into, and
Yeah.
it's super inside baseball and
Yeah.
it's super hilarious. And admittedly, again, this it hits me in my sweet spot because I love comedy. I love the idea of writing about comedy, and I love the process of writing and talking about the writing of comedy.
Yeah.
So he does a thing which I do believe goes on the show. It does air, but corrections doesn't air. Um, corrections is a internet short. Um, but he does air on the show Surprise Inspection,
Mhm.
where he showcases the jokes that didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
And again, it's super inside baseball, and it makes me happy whenever uh that sort of thing happens because it it pulls the curtain back. There are lots of little things like that that I find personally satisfying about it. Now,
Yeah.
whether or not that deserves a place in the next bracket is neither here nor there. But at least I'll take corrections off the table, which is some of the funniest things because it's basically him with a Negroni and a card of all the things that people sent in,
Yeah.
misspoke about, that were factually inaccurate, that were grammatically incorrect, and and he just goes through them and marks them off the list, and it's hilariously funny to me.
Yeah.
But I again, that's I fully admit that 80% of that is it's perfection to me,
Yeah.
not necessarily whether or not it should move forward.
Hmm. Yeah, I really don't know what to do here. I'm at an impasse.
They both win. They're both winners. I don't know, man. I think, yeah, it's a tough road to hoe. I mean, I'm for Myers. You're for Green. I think it flip a coin, man. Flip a coin.
Rock, paper, scissors.
No, hang on. Okay. Uh, Myers is yeah, it starts with an M. Green's a G. 1 through 5, Green. 6 through 10, Myers. Hey Siri, give me a number between 1 and 10. Myers.
All right, there you go. I promise it will not matter in the next round.
It's not gonna matter.
We're moving Myers ahead for this bracket. Um,
By dint of the random number generator.
um, I think when we look at the tournament as a whole, we can really find some interesting things here. But the next one is also kind of a tough one. Well, I don't think it's that tough. The backgrounds are extremely similar. It's Jon Stewart versus Steve Colbert. Um, Not identical upbringings. Like Stephen Colbert was a child of the sketch comedy, Exit 57, Dana Carvey, and then ended up with his great role on the Daily Show. Jon Stewart came up through stand up and hosting stuff and
Mhm.
got and was very much in contention for the big spots. So Viacom took his MTV show and moved it to Arsenio Hall's syndication. They had canceled Hall, and Jon Stewart was now in that spot. And then Letterman signs him to Worldwide Pants, and he's frequently a guest host for Tom Snyder, and people feel like he's going to end up taking over Tom Snyder's spot. That doesn't happen. CBS actually offers him a spot after Snyder, and he turns it down. So Liz Winstead has left The Daily Show after being eked out by Kilborn, and then Kilborn leaves to take the CBS spot. That's when Stewart goes on to The Daily Show. ABC offers Stewart a spot after Nightline. He turns that down. That goes to Kimmel. And so Jon Stewart is kind of this, could have been a contender, but he just stuck with doing the Daily Show. He didn't ever take any of the network spots. And the closest he got to like a Tonight Show spot was as a piece of fiction on the Larry Sanders Show. He stayed pretty loyal to just the Daily Show. And Stewart like made that show. And really made a brand of political comedy, left-leaning political comedy. Some would say centrist, though. That still resonates today. But Stephen Colbert has like the spot, like he has the CBS late show spot that Letterman started. He's like the network guy, like Leno is the NBC guy and Fallon is now, and Kimmel's the ABC guy. So um, evenly matched, and the Daily
Yeah.
Show affiliation there. But I think as far as time logged on what we think of as a late night talk show, it's Colbert.
Yeah, I think this is another one of those. I I
And I
think
liked
this.
Jon Stewart's MTV
Oh,
show.
yeah. Yeah, no, no. I like John. If this was based on my preferences, I would have an even harder time. I think again, it comes down to what if because this is about late night talk shows,
Yeah,
Colbert's the winner. If
yeah,
this was about talking heads
yeah,
and even political, to just barring interviews and going to political satire and political commentary, um, you know, it would probably narrow it even closer because they both are so influential. But I think because this is a talk show bracket, it's Colbert over Stewart.
yeah,
Not by much, but you know,
for sure. Um,
119, 117.
right.
It's not too far apart.
The Battle of the Old Heads, Joe Franklin versus Tom Snyder.
Snyder, I think Snyder.
I think we have to put our thumb on the scale on this one. Personal preference, Tom Snyder.
I think Snyder. Yeah, no, no. I think it's not. I mean, again, this isn't about niche comedy stuff.
Yeah,
If we're talking general influence.
I think yeah. Snyder's the only non-comedian left on this list. I think
Mm,
so.
hmm
We'll talk about that on the next round.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay, this is like the matchup.
Oh,
Like
dude.
this is the Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant WrestleMania 4 bracket where they ended up both getting disqualified.
Wow.
Except we're gonna have to have a winner here. It's Johnny Carson versus Jay Leno.
Both get disqualified and it goes to Fallon.
um,
Maybe my fucking worst nightmare.
I obviously like you grew up with Carson. And I liked Leno as a guest, and I liked him as a guest host. And then the whole war happened, and I was obsessed with like the Bill Carter book, The Late Shift. And then the movie version of The Late Shift with Daniel Roebuck, uh, punk rock and Rob Zombie movie actor, as Jay Leno. Um, and it was really funny. The guy who played Letterman got booked on Letterman and then got bumped and never asked back. Um, but anyway, that like Leno had an impact on late night, no doubt. It's just a question of whether it was positive or not. Um, we've talked about how Carson established really, the blueprint for modern talk shows. Other people had hosted the Tonight Show, but Carson's what made the Tonight Show. And
Yeah,
I would argue that his moments are far more Can you think of a classic Leno interview moment?
not really.
Yeah.
You touched on it briefly, and we've talked about this with a couple of people, Joan Rivers and things like that, George Lopez. Leaving aside the chicanery around handing over the Tonight Show, moving the times around, dicking over several people in the process. Leaving that out, I feel like the Leno Tonight Show was not as good a show as the Carson Tonight Show.
Yeah.
I think that the bits that he did, I feel like Carson put a lot more variety, at least through the large portion of his run.
Yeah.
Carson put a lot more variety into the stuff that he did. He was much more of a I feel like he was much more of a raconteur and magician raconteur. Not that he was a comedy powerhouse, but I feel like he definitely had his lane that he was in. And I feel like under Jay Leno, it wasn't a worse show. It was a different show, but it was a lesser show.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the most damning thing about it. Like I said, leaving out now, if you add in the chicanery, Carson for the win because
Let's really quickly. Not only did like Leno come in and swoop in on Carson in a controversial way at the time, but then he messed it up all over again when he walked away from the Tonight Show and then walked back in, taking it
and
away.
decided not to. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, regrets, sure, but
I had a
you
few.
don't. Yeah, but then again, 2 feet of mention. The but yeah, that alone, if that's being counted, Leno's out
Yeah,
because if this is about the best,
the
and most
champion of late
influential,
night.
yeah, it's Carson. It's 100% Carson
Yeah,
out of those two. It's a tough road to hoe, but I feel like on the surface it looks tougher than it is for me at least. Thinking about it now, like I said, the Tonight Show was starring Johnny Carson, better show than the Tonight Show starring Jay Leno. No
yeah.
matter how many funny headlines from local news. Hey, look at that. Hey, they spelled baloney wrong. Ooh, look at that. What's in the news?
Carson
That's my
movie.
Leno. That was my Johnny Carson impression. Wow, wacky stuff.
These quarterfinals are going to go fast and furious.
Yeah, there.
I'm surprised Bill Maher lasted this long, but now he's up against Letterman.
Yeah, no, it's like bye, Felicia, and by Felicia I mean Bill Maher. That's just we're done. Yeah, no, he fucking can't stand up to Letterman.
Yeah, you can.
Eat a bag of dicks, Maher. Bye. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
Uh, Next one, Conan O'Brien, Arsenio Hall.
Conan.
Both great, but
Conan.
longevity, ultimate influence over the format.
Especially if we pull the Tom Green stuff in for because Conan's got podcasts
Yeah,
and he's got other TV shows that he's doing, especially if we're broadening influence and continued influence.
yeah,
Yeah, this, let's give a
yeah.
whoop, 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 whoop for Arsenio and then move on.
All right. So the spot that I really had wanted to go to Green, but ended up going to Myers, is now up against Colbert. Um, it's Myers versus Colbert, and if you'd asked me Tom Green versus Colbert, I still would have said Tom Green would have had more of an influence over late night than Myers. I mean, well, or Colbert. Um, with Myers and Colbert, I feel like they kind of inherit the same spot, but Colbert's got
Yeah,
Colbert's got the earlier time slot. If that makes a difference.
I don't think it does, but I mean, but again, I feel like we are kind of this is, I think, a much more closely run race than Leno Carson, in my opinion.
Okay.
And not just because I don't dislike Stephen Colbert. I like his stuff just fine, and I'm amused at all whenever I watch it. I do feel like it is they're both chugging down the same track, so to speak.
Yeah.
So um, man, it's a tough one. I mean, I'm gonna say Myers just because of personal bias,
Yeah,
but that doesn't denigrate Stephen Colbert in the least.
yeah,
That's where I'm at with this. Is I have to say I watch Myers more.
yeah, yeah,
That's really the only argument I have.
yeah, yeah.
Not that he's better, not that he's funnier, not that I think. Yeah, I was gonna say I was trying to do the whole stupid. Which guy would you rather have a beer with? And I just like I could see the advantages of sitting down to a beer with either of those dudes.
Yeah,
So it's really just this is entirely just my own personal bias.
yeah. I mean,
I mean, do we have to do another random number generator? Because that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I mean, it's hard. I think it's hard, and it's not gonna. I guarantee you, it won't matter in the semifinal. But so late night with Seth Meyers has been around since, oh gosh,
10 years. It's been around 10 years.
has it really?
Yeah, he just celebrated his 10th anniversary.
That is wild.
Wild, wacky stuff. Sorry, wild, wacky stuff.
Oh yeah, so like that show used to be Jimmy Fallon's. I totally had forgotten that Jimmy Fallon had that show before the Tonight Show. He totally
Hmm
did,
hmm
and
hmm
Myers had it. And then again, yeah, it's you're at the mercy of if the brackets had been arranged differently, Fallon would have been we'd be talking about Fallon right now, like as far as but this is how
Yeah, it
the
would have been a lot closer. It would have been a lot closer.
yeah, yeah.
I still would
Um,
have tried to kick him to the curb as hard as I could, but
Stephen Colbert has been around about the same amount of time, or the Late Show with Stephen Colbert has been around about 10 years. So you
yeah,
can't go by time. And it's like one was all his work was like sketch comedy and stuff and Daily Show, and the other guy was like the head writer at Saturday Night Live.
yeah. Well, Weekend Update and yeah.
But he was the head writer too.
No, I said right. I'm just saying, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
writer, performer on SNL, Weekend
Yeah.
Update, head writer.
I'd be willing to give to Myers, considering like he probably has had more of a say and influence over the late night landscape than Colbert,
Yeah, as a whole.
if you factor those things in.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like I said, I can't
Yeah,
I can't say I'm disappointed if Myers moves forward. I just we're now getting to the place where
yeah,
you're getting the best of the best, and
yeah, yeah.
this
And
is what we have.
again, and this is what I'm gonna nag about. Like if Green had gotten this far, like I think I still say Green has more of a influence over, but does Green have an influence over the late night landscape, or does he just have an influence over like a certain brand of comedy?
See, that's
And I'm
that's
willing to,
that's
and that's why I'm willing to go with Myers because if you look at late night as a whole, I could
yeah,
see the argument that Myers has, for better or worse. I'm not I don't dislike Myers. I'm just not I've to me he's kind of white bread. Like there's nothing about Myers that stands out for me.
sure.
But that's what a lot of late night is, unfortunately, with
Yeah.
Fallon and Myers, and like it's just not. It's
See,
like
I feel like Kimmel and Fallon, not necessarily in that order, really, and like there's a direct line that from the Carson Leno, like this is for people who are watching this as they fall asleep kind of thing.
yeah,
I mean, I know the landscape's changed and people don't usually watch TV, after the 11 o'clock news goes off, leave the TV on to lull them to sleep. But, but I get that white bread thing. I feel like this is me stumping for Seth Meyers, I guess. He's a lot less middle of the road than you would. Fallon 100%. And that might be, we may have just I may have just had an epiphany about why Fallon pisses me off and Kimmel is a non-entity, because they are much more of that mold of here's something that's slightly topical, slightly funny, slightly edgy, nothing to it's very country buffet.
yeah,
No one's going to be offended by these mashed potatoes, and it's like I feel like Seth Meyers there's a little bit, for me at least from what I've seen, is he looks like he's having fun. He's not afraid to call out when things don't work, and that to me, and he's not afraid to take chances and then go like, yeah, that just fucking sucked. It's very much of that Letterman. It's very much of that Letterman feel where when shit was going wrong on the Letterman show, the best. It was the best. When stuff was going great, it was fine. But when shit started to go wrong and you could tell, you could see Dave starting to get sour about things, it was never funnier than when he was sitting there going, you know, and yeah, well, we gave it a shot, didn't we? Kind of thing. And I feel like that to me is there's more of that in the Seth Meyers show ethos than in like your Fallons and your Lenos. And I'm not saying Colbert's not like that, but for me, that's the Myers vote for me.
Fair enough. This is going to be a really quick quarterfinal matchup. Tom Snyder, who we love, who we miss, who did great interviews. His
Yeah.
opponent in this bracket is Johnny Carson. And for all you look at late night talk shows, if this were like who's the best interview, probably Tom Snyder would
Oh, a
beat.
thousand percent. 1,000%.
But this is late night talk show host.
Yes.
And Snyder has made it this far without a band leader, a
With,
monologue,
well, like I said, an ashtray and a
audience.
couple chairs and a table. Yeah. Maybe he had a potted plant on that stage. I'm not sure. Yeah,
um,
Carson by a country mile.
yeah, Carson moves ahead to the semifinals. Um, so I have two semifinals. That's what semifinal means.
Yes, semi
For
from
you
the Latin
sports,
meaning.
for those of you who aren't sports fans, um, Carson Myers, we're gonna give it to Carson.
Yeah, yeah.
If it
That's
was if Tom Green
neither.
ended up here like I'd wanted, we would have given it to Carson.
We would have given it to Tom Green. No.
If Stephen Colbert had ended up here, we would have given it to
Yeah,
Carson.
it's Carson. Yeah, there's no two ways about that.
Yeah. Um, and again, who has the influence over the late night format? I'm going to go to my grave, Gene, saying Tom Green has done more for uh, a certain brand of comedy. I get, but yeah, late night talk show format. I could still argue about Green versus Myers versus Colbert.
Yeah.
It's an interesting three-way match.
Yeah, no, and
But
again, not to discount Tom Green's influence in a general sense.
yeah, yeah. But Carson is
Yeah,
okay.
ain't no doubt about it.
This next semifinal is tough. Um, it's really tough. It's David Letterman versus Conan O'Brien. I know who Conan would say.
He would
Uh,
say Conan. He would say Conan O'Brien, but he would be 100% joking about it.
yes. um, I also think David Letterman would be very humble and say,
Yeah,
"Oh no, Conan has done."
yeah,
We would talk about all the great things Conan has done.
yeah.
But this is
David Letterman would be bothered that you asked the question.
yes. You think about the fact that like something David Letterman didn't do for a lot of people, um, that he did well, you know, he went on Conan's show. I mean, he definitely pushed Conan. He talked about in favor of Conan when Leno stole Tonight Show back from him. Like, he's the one who really, gave. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Conan came from Saturday Night Live. Conan came from National Lampoon, right? Harvard and stuff.
Hmm.
Um,
Simpsons, Harvard.
yeah, yeah. Letterman was like this, Letterman took an interesting route too, as far as like,
Yeah,
locally,
stand-up comic. Yeah, just no local news dude.
a daytime show at one point.
Daytime. Yeah, weird little daytime show.
And they both have had these meteors don't rise, they fall.
Meteoric rise.
That's something people say though. It isn't,
I
don't
know it's weird.
people say meteoric
They do. They do.
meteors fall?
I
Um, Even if you ask me about personal taste, I like both these guys and everything they've done. This is like choosing between John Cena and CM Punk in my estimation. Or maybe it's more like choosing between um, Bret the Hitman Hart and CM Punk. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. So I think the most telling thing about this matchup is there wouldn't be a Conan O'Brien without a David Letterman.
Okay.
That I think is the now you could argue Conan brought a different that Harvard Lampoon Simpsons Saturday Night Live spin to his show. It was very quirky and while it wasn't I mean they did have dude, Amy Poehler as Andy Richter's younger sister, like the sketches and stuff on that show were chef's kiss. And
You could say Conan introduced more writers and sketch performers than Letterman did. I mean, the cultural influence of Amy Poehler and the UCB and Robert Smigel
yeah,
versus Larry Bud.
well, Chris Elliott, I think,
You got Chris Elliott there too.
um, uh, but Larry Bud Millman. Uh, so that I think to me is the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when you go back to deliberate,
Yeah,
just remember that there would be no Conan O'Brien without a David Letterman. Like
yeah,
that really is I rest my case.
yeah,
That to me is the kicker. As
yeah,
much as I think Conan deserves it, again, best of the best. There's no losers here
yeah.
except for Conan O'Brien.
Omar?
He's yeah, except for Bill Barr. Oh, there's a bunch of losers here, but in this bracket system,
Yeah,
you're already in the championship. So that's
yeah.
my argument.
Letterman wins after a 60-minute Iron Man match and a firm handshake at the end.
Yes, exactly.
So before we go to the grand finale, the main event, with
Hmm.
what time
Hmm.
we have left, it just occurred to me, this is going to be random, not club random with Bill Maher. But as far as like, the funny like thing with Larry Sanders show and like, all the jokes about Jon Stewart was trying to usurp him and stuff. There's a couple folks I wonder if they were offered late night shows and turned them down. Ben Stiller is somebody who I would not be surprised if at some point they were talking to him about doing a late night show because he was involved with Saturday Night Live. He certainly guested on stuff. Not the way he went, obviously. He went on to, more acting,
Hmm.
writing, and then like now he's, showrunner for Severance, which is like, a kind of a buzzy show, even if not everybody has Apple TV.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how he would be as an interviewer. Did he even ever guest host,
I
There was
don't
also the thing where like
recall.
Letterman was out. Oh, that's another thing I should have mentioned about Tom Green. Like Letterman picked Tom Green to be a guest host when Letterman was out.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Even more
Um,
reason that Letterman had an eye for talent.
yeah. Some other guest hosts that Letterman had were David Brenner, who David Brenner I liked, and he actually had a very short-lived talk show. Regis Philbin, Drew Barrymore was a guest host. Um,
That's
Charles Grodin never had a talk show. He was just a great talk show host. And
yeah, it's dude. Yeah, that would have been
uh,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. Tom Arnold was a guest host a couple times, which I didn't
Huh.
know. Um, Adam Sandler guest hosted the Late Show with David Letterman. Another guy, the wonder, if they ever offered him that. And I think it really boils down to like, who are going to be great interviewers, as opposed to like, Charles Grodin. Did Charles Grodin ever have a show?
Now that you say that, I feel like
He did, didn't he?
he did.
Charles Grodin had, let's see, and then we'll get to our main event. Um, but it, but did he, or did we just think
I
he did?
feel like this could be a Mandela
26,
effect.
26 episodes.
Okay. Yes, he did. He did.
26 episodes though.
Yeah, no, no, not enough, but
Interviewing is probably just not for him. Just imagine him getting off
love it.
guts.
Love it.
Um, Larry David would have been an interesting host for a late night show. But these are
Eh,
all people who wanted to do other things.
eh. Just got to do the Larry David.
Any other fun hosts who never were? Gary
No.
Shandling obviously
Yeah,
did not.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
he chose a different route.
Yeah, yeah. He chose to actually uh do the faux talk show. I can't really think of anyone that should have had a show that didn't. Because again, like you said, I feel like there was a time where if you were looking for work, they'd give you a job
Yeah,
doing uh doing a talk show.
yeah. Did Vince Vaughn have a talk show? He's a guy I could imagine having
Oh, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
a.
Huh. I
I
didn't
think
realize looking at Charles Grodin's filmography, I didn't realize that he played news vendor in Captain Nice in 1967.
did Martin Short ever have a? Oh yeah, well Jimmy Glick. That doesn't really count though.
Yeah, that's another So Charles Grodin show was on from 1995 to 1998 with
Yeah,
26 episodes. It's
yeah.
another one of those where it's like
What were you doing?
weird.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right. Well, we
uh
have a few minutes
let's wrap
left.
it. Let's wrap it up.
Main event: Carson versus Letterman. Again, this is like a Conan situation in that we know what Letterman would say.
Yeah.
We know what Letterman would say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I kind of don't want to declare a winner. I kind of want to be those two at the top of the mountain. But I don't know. Carson.
Who's still alive? That's my kicker on this one.
uh,
Carson's a quitter.
oh man. Carson went on Letterman's show like that was his last monologue and his last written jokes. Like Carson loved Letterman.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I think this would be a lot different had we had gold, silver, and bronze ages,
Yeah.
um, where it would be a no-brainer to say Letterman. I still think I mean, I joked at the very beginning of this whole schmear. I really do still believe that Letterman's the winner ultimately.
Yeah.
Um, just because while Carson nailed the format down and became literally America's face of what a talk show host is,
Yeah.
regardless of all the other people we've talked about, past and present, daytime, nighttime, late night, whatever. Johnny Carson was America's talk show host.
Yeah.
Everybody watched Carson. Everybody's parents watched Carson. Everybody's grandparents watched Carson. And again, we grew up watching Carson and best of Carson's.
Yeah.
Um, but I think if you're going to say, as we've said with several other people here, who pushed the format into what it is today, you couldn't have Letterman without Carson, but you could not have the entire spectrum of how late night is now
Yeah.
without Letterman building on what Carson did.
That's true.
Um, you know,
Letterman was on longer, believe it or not. If you combine the shows. If you combine all the shows he did, he had a longer tenure than Carson by a little bit.
huh,
Like 33 years versus 30.
huh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That had I not been confronted with the facts, I would not have believed that. Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I wasn't I was joking at the beginning. I wasn't joking, but it was funny to say. But I really do believe that that's true. Letterman's the best talk show host of all time. And when you when Letterman decided to do some more interviews, like the excitement around that and the buzz around that is very telling. That it's
Yeah.
like, oh, Letterman's back and Letterman's going to do some stuff, even though it was a completely different format.
Yeah.
But it was I feel like that is also very telling of his place in the pantheon of talk.
Yeah, because after Carson left, they said, oh, the deal is that he's going to do these specials and stuff. Nothing ever materialized. He never. I don't think he ever went back to NBC. His all his appearances were on Letterman's show. So, did Carson even sit down for an interview with anybody after that?
I feel like he didn't. I feel like he just played tennis till he died.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna look this up because like I certainly remember the talk around him like hosting specials. Did you watch the or read the Late Shift?
I didn't read it. I watched the movie a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. I was obsessed with that stuff, man. Um, with that whole thing, and I definitely remember the talk about like, oh no, he'll get to do specials.
Yeah.
Like that was like the consolation prize because he got railroaded out on that show, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's the thing is Leno's backstab two of our, you know,
Three,
well, yeah,
three.
yeah, three. But I mean, but our finalists basically,
Yeah,
our semifinalists.
yeah. Leno and I mean, or yeah, Letterman, Carson, and Conan can all say
Mhm.
some things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, what did he end up doing? Final years, he he turned down an offer to appear on the NBC 75th anniversary. It's he was like sick too, I think was part of
Yeah,
that.
no, I don't I think his health was failing, but
I didn't realize that. Like I thought he was just mad, but no.
just yeah, just being a dick. No.
Um, at the first Comedy Awards on Comedy Central, the Johnny Carson Award was given to David Letterman. At the second annual Comedy Awards on Comedy Central, the Johnny
David
Carson.
Letterman award was given to Johnny Carson.
Right. Don Rickles is something we didn't talk about. That's a movie.
Oh yeah.
Um, didn't really. I think he kind of had like a for a minute had like a talk show where he was the host.
Well,
And,
he guest hosted for Carson too, did he not? I feel like he guest hosted for Carson.
um, but he was more frequently like yeah, guests and stuff.
Yes, definitely, definitely on the other side.
Yeah.
But
Drew Carey is another person who I'm surprised never had a talk show that I can think of. Game show. He got a game show.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, he's been hosting Prices Right for 18 years now. But
that's kind of insane to me.
yeah, yeah. Um, and yeah. And then you just think about some of the people who it didn't work out for, but still like we remember that they had a show, like Pat Sajak,
Right, right.
Heavy Chase, and
Well,
Alan.
Chevy Chase is a punchline, so it's easy to remember that. Uh, you know who didn't get a show? Who should have gotten a show? Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah, he had Up All Night, but
But I'm just saying, could you imagine can you imagine a less appealing voice for talk show than Gilbert's Gottfried's character voice? So I hear you're doing a new movie. What's that about?
Trevor Moore kind of had a talk show, but it felt like a little bit more of a parody of talk shows than really a talk show.
Yeah.
So Gene, if they've tried to recreate the success of like, the talk show format with like new hosts on Peacock or like late night NBC or whatever, and they've fizzled out after like a season or two. Every cable network's had a show for a season or two that's fizzled out. So really nowadays you have Myers, Kimmel, um,
Colbert.
Fallon,
Colbert.
Colbert, and then like Conan's still doing stuff, but like his like late night show is done,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then Tom Green's doing stuff now, like, but I don't think he's returning to that format. I know he's
Well, was he on?
he teased at the end of his documentary. So Tom Green moved down to Hollywood, bought a place in Canada, like acreage or whatever in Canada. He's got a new lady that he's going to be marrying. And he was teasing like the best has just started, and he's going to begin some new stuff. And I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know if that's going to be a talk show format. Joe Rogan has his show for better or worse. Like that is a big cultural
Worse.
thing.
Worse.
Um, Not really the late night talk show format, you know. I don't think,
No.
and I think that's a telling thing. Like if you put him in front of an audience, depending on the audience, if it was a bunch of meatheads, I don't know.
Yeah.
So who would it be interesting now to try out a talk show with? Like who would be the next if it were up to you, if you're Mr. Network programmer and they're like, "Well, Gene, you know, as long as you don't give it to Brodie, then we'll let you pick a host for our 1:05 a.m. slot."
The-
Like who are some people you could consider nowadays?
Um, let's think about that. That's really interesting. Trying to think of who, well, someone who had a semi talk show host or talk show format that they just did in special. Uh TV's John Mulaney.
Oh, I hate Mulaney.
I love Mulaney so much, dude. Sorry, our roads diverge here.
Yes.
But I'm saying I think that he has that thing, you know. And he did do that. Like I said, he did do that semi talk show special thing.
Yeah.
I think who else is that has that um
How is Taylor Tomlinson doing on After Midnight? Would she work with just a straight like talk show format, not like the game show thing?
probably probably um shoot. Well, this is a really good question. I'm completely drawing a blank. Um
Saturday Night Live cast members, you know, that's kind of like the new path to,
mm,
to talk shows. I mean, is there anybody currently? Sarah
um
Sarah
Sarah
Sherman
Sherman.
show.
Dude, I'd love to see that show. That would be a fucking hot mess, and I would be there for it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think her and Colin not Colin uh Bo and Yang have like a podcast or something that they're frequently on together, but everybody does
yeah,
podcasts now.
yeah, that's pretty much. I think that's part of you know. And who would you want? See, that's the thing is, it seems like it's a very interesting place to be because you have to be a good interviewer. You can't have the personality of a Pat Rock, yet you can't be so like like I joked about it, but the Gilbert Gottfried or Gilbert Gottfried talk show would be insane
Yeah.
because there's no way that he is not going to be, unless you just had the craziest guests on, that he is not going to be the biggest person in that room.
Yeah.
Martin Short might be an interesting fellow as himself and not as Jiminy Glick,
Yeah.
uh, especially given the fact that he's so quick-witted. Like when you watch him interact on talk shows with, he's oftentimes plugging stuff with Steve Martin, but just in general, like that would be, I think that would be hilarious to watch.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a tough fit, I think nowadays. I feel like celebrity is so specific and tailored these days.
Yeah.
Um, that I feel like almost all the people on the list, with very few exceptions, mostly stand-up comedians, are are not that they don't have a point of view, but they're able to sublimate that in service of the show,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, Conan O'Brien was not somebody people knew when he got his show,
That's
but
true.
comedy people within comedy, not like us as comedy fans necessarily knew him,
Yeah,
like because he was in that writing class of like Bob Odenkirk and Rob
yeah,
Spike
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Um, and I was gonna say, like, it's funny on a Mr. Show, David Cross is the one who interviews people now on his podcast.
Hmm.
Odenkirk's busy like performing and producing.
Hmm.
The Jay Johnston Show. That's what you gotta
Good people on both sides of Jay Johnston.
have. But yeah, Conan was somebody who had come from like, you know,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
so it wasn't necessarily I was gonna be a performer, you know, necessarily. Um,
Yes,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I mean, he did had done some skits. Um, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, because Letterman was a stand-up. Um, you
I
know,
mean, Steve Allen did comedy.
yeah.
Letterman did stand up. Leno. Um,
Louis C.K. is somebody I know who is a reprehensible person. He was somebody who I was thinking of though, like, oh, I'm surprised that they never tried to stick him on, like on a maybe they offered, but it's because a lot of these guys like wanted to be filmmakers or
yeah, they had other
yeah, yeah.
aims.
So somebody who's be like, no, I think it's really fun that format. So it has to be somebody who loves like, and I see where you mean with some of the stuff Mulaney has made, he's got that mindset.
Hmm.
Like, you know, I liked his Netflix special at the time, but I'm one of the world's biggest Anna Marie Tendler fans, and that's where I'll leave it at that. Um, that's where my bias comes from.
Sure.
Um, you know. Like you look at somebody like Jen Kirkman, who
Hmm.
who we love and who is a smart writer, and you know, we never talked to her about this. I know she had her own UCB show, and I feel like she had guests on there, but you know, never had the opportunity to do like her like a late night talk show, obviously, but she was a guest on late night shows.
Yeah.
But that was to say, you have to have somebody that mindset who's in love with the medium and the format itself. Um, so like while Letterman did like a cameo in Cabin Boy, he didn't want to act, and he didn't necessarily like want to
And
write.
he didn't really act when he was doing the cameo.
Like it's somebody who like I've interviewed people. I've had an interview podcast, not just this one, but I had the short-lived horror interview podcast.
Hmm.
Um, I used to be the Andy Richter of a live stage show, talk show in Phoenix called Grand Avenue Tonight. Um, but I'm somebody who, also wants to write and direct stuff. So like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
but
it's
I
not
also love the
necessarily your
format. So,
focus.
but I'm not a stand-up, and so I couldn't do like a monologue. So that's to say, like, not that I was putting myself up as a candidate for a late night show, but to say that, you have to have somebody who has the ambition for that medium and that format. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's cool being a star in that as opposed to being like the next Jim Carrey.
Yeah, and I think that's what because a lot of the people that I think there are a lot of people that would be an interesting conversation. They would play an interesting part in any conversation that they were part of,
Yeah.
but not necessarily uh carry a show and do hundreds of episodes.
Yeah.
I think that you know there are a lot of people that I would like to see uh you know have conversations.
Yeah.
Um, but not necessarily. I wouldn't think of them as a talk show host per se.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think it does bring up that it brings up that it's weird. It's weird given how maybe it's because it's so old media
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that there's just not a niche um left for that. That's already been filled, and they're probably not going to be opening more. They're not going to be opening the book, so to speak. And there's
And,
so many other ways to make content.
and those four guys who are doing it now will probably are young enough that they'll be doing it for a lot more years,
Yeah, they can retire. They'll
Unless
retire.
there's something in them personally that's just like, I don't want to do this anymore. If they
Yeah,
just,
the Jack Parr, the
you know,
Jack Parr.
you know who would be fun? Pete Davidson.
After I said Mulaney, I thought Pete Davidson, and again,
That would be
'cause I
interesting.
thought of a few. I thought of a few people that I would just like to see do that.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy.
Okay.
Tom Hardy, Pete Davidson came up too. But again, I feel like he's someone I would like to see have conversations with people.
Yeah.
Um, and Tom Hardy's kind of the same. The interviews that I've seen with him, he seems like a fascinating guy. And I feel like I would, but again, there's a, I think there's a difference between wanting to see people in conversation and thinking they would make a good talk show host.
Yeah, yeah,
And I feel like that could probably be the epitaph of a lot of the people who did not make the cuts here
yeah,
is is there, Colin Quinn, another person who's on the list on our long list,
yeah,
who I think is fascinating to have to be in conversation.
yeah,
I'm sure Norm Macdonald.
yeah,
Like I could listen to Norm Macdonald read the phone book basically,
yeah,
because he's so engaging in what he talks about, that sort of stuff. But and they had their shot and they weren't. But I feel like entertainment conversation wise, um, you know, it's different than being a talk show host, I guess.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see who does eventually take over, if anybody, for those um,
Premier
current late night
spots.
institutions, or if they'll just end up turning into, you know, sketch shows and podcasts and stuff and not really have the late night talk show anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who like Fallon's not that old. He could do that
No,
for
no.
20 years, man. Um, yeah, I don't think Fallon's much. I don't think I'm much older than him
Yeah.
and Kimmel.
They're like in their 50s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I am. Um, like I said, I don't think they're much on either side of me. If I might be slightly older, but yeah, it's like especially if it's just you're kind of sitting down and jawing about stuff. Um, yeah, because I can, if I cruise through Instagram, uh, I can see reels of people, that I think they would make an interesting person to have a conversation with, but yeah,
It's gonna be Mr. Beast and Logan Paul. Those are
fuck me. Probably. You know what though? That's the thing is if the format survives, if the
I show
format
speed.
survives, huh?
I show speed and Kai Cenat.
Oh my God.
The Rizzler.
Dude.
Late night.
Oh,
The
hey, you know
Rizzler.
what? This is apropos of nothing. But I was watching somebody uploaded a couple 4K uh versions of some of the songs from Rocky Horror Picture Show. And so I was watching Sweet Transvestite. And when when Tim Curry comes down the elevator, I'm like, I pointed out to Fletcher, I'm like, Proto Rizzler. Because there's that, because when he comes down and he's all like, all he needed to do was do the
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I'm like, the Proto Rizzler, dude.
It occurs to me like Jane Wickline, the newest Saturday Night Live cast member, came from TikTok. Um,
Hmm.
I don't think it is totally.
Doesn't she? She's got her dad's a writer, I think, though.
Well, I think her mom was a page at Saturday Night
Something.
Live. Yeah.
Yeah. I like her stuff. The songs that she's been doing are pretty good.
Yeah. So I mean, somebody could go that route, from TikTok to, you know, some show
Yeah,
and like be.
yeah,
Yeah, you don't really. I was gonna say you don't see a whole lot of interviewing on TikTok. I mean, that could be the next late night show. That could be like, the TikTok late night show. I mean, but even that's up to who knows what will happen with that app. Like the point being, like, yeah, it's just a different landscape now. I would love to see the format, the late night format, the showtimey, show busy, like old timey, I'd like it to continue. I just don't know.
yeah.
I don't know who will carry that torch. So
Right. Well, with the pox eclipse coming, it'll probably be people standing by a rock. Please welcome my next guest. He's just figured out a new way to winkle rats out of the ground. Yeah. So, good Lord Humongous. So I understand, Lord Humongous. You have a really interesting policy on the gasoline. Yes, thank you for asking. All they need to do is give me the gasoline. Just walk away, and I let you live. Wild, wacky stuff. Lord Humongous. Uh, please welcome. That's the no, no.
Welcome to
That's
the
what it
Thunder.
is. No, that's the talk show. It's no, he's not a guest. He's welcome. The Lord Humongous, the Ayatollah of rock and roll, the warrior of the wasteland, and your host. Anyway,
Master Blaster would be the sidekick, right?
no, Wes would be the sidekick.
Okay.
What's his face? John Vernon. He'd be chained up next to the desk. Be still, my dog of war. Gotta go watch Mad Max again. Um, yeah, man. I mean, I just think the landscape's going to change so much, and it already has. And I feel like the other, yes, you just heard a Mad Max reference. My son is wandering around behind me. Um, um, I feel like the other thing too is if you really think about it, there's two things operating. The pinnacle of talk show stuff is I can't think of another job except maybe for news anchor where there's national news anchor where there's so few spots. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
like how many players are there in the WNBA or the NBA? How many players are there in the NFL? How many players are there in Major League Baseball? Dude, there's like literally like four dudes who are doing this work,
Yeah.
main dudes. It's like being president. I feel like it's on par with being president or vice president. There's just if you want to grow up to be a national late night host, there's no slots for that.
Yeah.
So the democratization of media that has come along with podcasts and all that, I think, you know, that I think has allowed people to, I mean, hell, we do it, you know. We were an interview show for a very long time. So I don't know how the big picture is going to be, but I can't see the big real the show,
Yeah.
being, you know, uh, opening up more than it already is with podcasts and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm sure
Uh,
as soon as we sign off, I'm going to think of like five different people that I'm like, oh yeah, that person.
anything else you want to cover before I really should go do house stuff
Yeah,
before.
no, I need to clean.
But I
I need
enjoyed
to
it, obviously.
finish cleaning up vomit. No, just walk away and give me the gasoline. I'll let you live. Is that's his catchphrase when he signs off. And remember, just walk away and I let you live. I'd like to thank, Alex Karras for joining me. I'd like to thank, magician David Copperfield for his illusions, the hockey mask, and the whole nine yards. Um, yeah, we're done. I think we're done.
All right.
So, Dave or Letterman, if you want to get in contact with our people and get your certificate,
It was championship belt.
yeah, his championship belt. But
Yeah.
there you go.
Oh, and I'll have
Um,
to defend it.
if Tom Green hadn't hit him in the head with that folding chair, he would have won it all. No. Yeah, there you go, man.
All right.
I'll have to clean some crevices. That's what I'm doing.
Yes. Same here. Um, we have a cat now, so I get to do that.
Get to clean crevices.
Yeah. Yeah. That letter gets everywhere, man.
If oh, fucking does, man. All right, all right, man. Love
Let's
you,
we gotta
dude.
do a late night sign off.
Oh, sure. I did just walk away and I let you live.
One of these.
He's- with the what do you call it? Uh, what's his the band? That's the other thing too. They have a band.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that pissed me off the most about Seth Meyers recently is NBC made him cut the band.
Yeah. That's kind of ridiculous.
It's kind of ridiculous. I'm pretty sure he just had them there so that he'd give Fred Armisen a gig.
Ugh, another guy that I'm not a hot on, but
Anyway, all right, man. Love you, dude.
you too.
Talk to you soon.
Till next time.
Woo! Just walk away and I let you live. Really need a hockey mask. Bye. 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 How much time do we have left? We have a lot of time left.
Just till I hit this button.
Okay. Bye.
Shaky Town was created by Brodie Hubbard and Gene George. You can find us on various social media platforms under those names. You can also find the show on YouTube at Shaky Town and on Blue Sky at Shaky Town. We also still have accounts on Facebook, X, and Instagram at Shaky Town Radio, or just go to shakytownradio.com.